Hello, this is Taylor. Welcome to the third annual Where I'm Moving Next in New York City and How Much I'm Paying video. So today we're going to discuss the key criteria, wish list items, priorities, etc. that I considered when making a decision on where to live next within New York City as I enter my fourth year of living here. The decision itself, and then how much I will be paying. So what's even the point of this video and why do I make one every single year? Well, first of all, I just find it fun to take you guys through my thought process around this fairly common shared experience that so many of us have, which is the kind of housing shuffle that we go through as a young professional before we become a bit more settled. But also, my hope is that in discussing my priorities on where I want to live at this point in my life, you come away from this video either one, slightly entertained in some way, or two, just a tad bit more informed when making your own decision if you're going through this as well. So for those who don't know this context, come along with me on an emotional roller coaster for just a moment, if you will. I've lived in New York City for 3 years now, and in my time here, I have lived in 2 apartments. And for those who have been here for a bit, you might remember my first apartment, which was a beautiful luxury high-rise apartment in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of Manhattan, New York City. In fact, the odds are fairly high that my tour of that apartment is what brought you to this channel. I lived there with a close friend of mine from college, and we actually got a COVID deal when we first moved in, coupled with us constructing this world-famous flex wall to turn a large 1-bedroom into a 2-bedroom, and boom, there I was paying only $1,875 for this stunning apartment in Manhattan, New York City. So 1 year in that apartment goes by, and I am dreading the impending renewal period. We got the COVID deal, but the city was recovering from the pandemic, people were moving back, and the median rental prices for a 1-bedroom in New York City was up to $4,000 at that point, which was a 40% year-over-year increase at the time. Crazy. So I could only imagine what my building was gonna raise my rent to. The day comes, I see the subject line in my email, new information regarding lease renewal offers. I begrudgingly open the email only to find out that I was unknowingly living in a rent-stabilized building for that whole entire year, and my rent increased all of 1.5%. Wow. And even though by that time my priorities had shifted a bit, in other words, I was ready to live in a slightly more desirable neighborhood, we could simply not pass up rent stabilization on top of an existing COVID deal at a time when rental prices were increasing astronomically. So we happily renewed our lease. So another year passes, and a few months before the renewal period comes up again, my roommate let me know that she would be moving in with her significant other at the end of our lease. And so I had the option of finding someone to fill her room and renewing the lease, or finding somewhere else to live. And by that time, my priorities had pretty meaningfully changed. I'd lived in the city for 2 years at that point, and so I felt pretty settled. I knew the parts of the city that I enjoyed hanging out in, and I wasn't as price sensitive because I'd worked 2 six-figure jobs for multiple years at that point. So I made the very bittersweet decision to give up that beautiful rent-stabilized apartment. And when I say bittersweet, I really mean it. I mean, I truly feel like I grew up in that apartment in many ways. It was 2 very, very formative years of my life, and when I moved out, I made this I Moved video, which to this day might be, in some ways, my favorite video that I've ever made, but I digress. And so in the spirit of change and new beginnings, I took the leap of faith and moved to a totally different neighborhood in Manhattan with 2 totally different roommates who were both friends from college, but at the time I honestly didn't know them super well, but I've come to love them, got very lucky. But I didn't just move for the sake of making a change. The apartment checked off all of my wish list items at the time, which really centered around living in a more walkable neighborhood of New York City with more character. Among the more obvious criteria, like having good natural light, a decent amount of space, and good roommates. And so now, 1 year later, here we find ourselves, myself, at the crossroads of whether to renew or not renew my current apartment. And as I'm entering my 4th year of living in New York City, my priorities on what I look for in a place to live have shifted quite a bit since I first moved here. And so to give you a sense of what my wish list looks like these days, it's something along these lines. First, for the characteristics of the space itself, lots of natural light. I knew from day one that a lot of natural light would be very important to me. I mean, as someone who grew up on the West Coast in a place where the sun is always shining, and as the more years that pass that I live on the East Coast, I realized just how much the sun affects my mood. Honestly, I wish I was a bit more resilient in the face of gloom, but I am not. I am resilient when it comes to city biking, no matter what the weather is, but that's just a point of pride for me, not really relevant. Next is having a fairly spacious space. Now, spacious is relative, this is New York City we're talking about, but some good breathing room, ideally enough space in the common areas where I could host parties, which is a huge plus of my current apartment that my former one did not have. It's about to be party season again. I'm very excited. I also work from home at least 1 day per week, which is actually less than when I was in consulting. But I have found it is actually pretty nice to have a couple different options in my apartment to choose from when I want to work from home, whether it's up in my bedroom, down at the kitchen table with my coffee in the morning. What do you do for work? Oh, I'm a full-time creator now. You don't say. Yes, sir. Me too. No way. What are the odds? Yep. Speaking of which, I'm trying to find ways to be more organized with my YouTube upload schedule because I'm kind of all over the place right now. Yeah, I feel that. Well, you should check out Skillshare because they have some really great classes that have helped me as a full-time creator. They're also sponsoring this video. Oh, is that so? What class have you found most helpful? So I've been loving Notion for YouTube creators. Since I already use Notion in my day-to-day, I wanted to level up and bring my whole YouTube organization onto Notion as well. And this class has taught me a ton of Notion's capabilities that I didn't even know existed before. Amazing. I'll give it a look. So Skillshare is like an online platform with a bunch of these classes. Yep, exactly. It's the largest online community for creatives with thousands of classes taught by experts on so many different topics like film, illustration, design, productivity, freelance, etc. Really great for curious people. So cool. I'll sign up right now. Yay. Well, you'll be pleased to know that the first 500 people that use the link in my description will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare, so you can get started today. Thanks, Taylor. You are very welcome. So what else was on your wish list? Oh yeah, last wish list item for the place itself includes kind of the more tactical things like washer and dryer and unit, good water pressure, I actually care about a lot, and then anything extra like outdoor space, dishwasher, etc. is all just a bonus. The next thing is roommates. As I've said many a time on my channel, I have no interest in living alone ever, and so I just like my default to be having some good friends around and then escaping to my bedroom when I need some alone time. So having some good roommates is paramount. And finally, a priority that I now hold near and dear to my heart and value a lot more than I could have ever imagined before actually having it is the neighborhood. So you guys might recall in my first and second annual versions of this video where I said that I'd like to live in a neighborhood with some more character after living in Hell's Kitchen, which has some charming pockets, but for the most part, it's a lot of busy streets and high rises. I mean, I lived on 42nd Street, which is literally the busiest street in all of New York City. And so after that, I really wanted to live in a more walkable area with local coffee shops and restaurants and hole-in-the-wall spots that you kind of come to call your own, and where you see familiar faces and get to know the baristas. Basically a place where I could figuratively step out in my flip-flops. Now, I know that might sound a little bit silly, like, Taylor, you're romanticizing your life way too much. Maybe, but so be it, because since moving to a neighborhood that has that, I cannot emphasize enough how much it has improved my quality of life, but more on this soon. So after developing my wish list, it was time to weigh the pros and cons of staying where I live now versus finding a new place. So pros of my current apartment, starting with tons of natural light. I mean, my bedroom is literally a fishbowl. There are windows on all 4 sides, which makes it a bit of a greenhouse in the summer, but that's what air conditioning is for. And the common space is also just flooded with natural light, especially in the morning, and just very, very high ceilings. It's a great vibe. It's spacious. This is the biggest bedroom I have ever had. This is the first bathroom I've ever had to myself in my entire life. And I have my own outdoor terrace, plus a lot of outdoor space out in the common areas, which is really, really great for hosting. Washer and dryer unit, good water pressure, all that jazz. Great roommates, 2 of them. And finally, the best neighborhood. My favorite neighborhood in New York City, in fact. I run into neighbors and friends and familiar faces and the same dogs like every single day. And again, I can't emphasize how big of a role that plays in my day-to-day enjoyments of living here. It's what really contributes to New York City feeling like a playground for adults, as I always say. And yeah, I just didn't feel that when I lived in Hell's Kitchen. And cons. It is not cheap. Currently, the whole apartment is $8,400 per month, which I have for the last year paid $3,133 per month, just myself, for my portion of the apartment, which is $37,600 per year. A nice chunk of change. And unlike my first apartment, I know for a fact that this one is not rent stabilized. So my roommates and I were nervous to find out how much they would increase our rent to. And we recently found out that it would increase from $8,400 per month for the whole apartment to $8,800 per month. So a $400 increase. So after weighing these pros and cons, what did we decide to do? Well, after the way I've talked about my current apartment, this is a big shocker, I'm sure, but we happily decided to renew the lease for another year. On the whole, I literally could not be happier with where I live. It has just catapulted my opinion of New York City even further into the stratosphere than it already was. And what will I be paying? So starting next month, I will be paying $3,175 per month for my portion of the apartment. So not cheap, but to live in the most lively city in the world in my 20s with all of my best friends within a 2-mile radius of me, That's showbiz, baby. And why not buy? People ask me that a lot. Lots and lots of reasons I can go into another video, but I'll just stick with I am not planning to live here long term as much as I love it, so it doesn't make too much sense for me. But until then, here's to at least one more year of videos in my apartment. I could not be happier. Like and subscribe if you made it this far, and until next time, turtle out. Can't reach the camera from here, but pretend I'm covering the camera. See ya.